You know how to hold it all together, but when it comes to your relationships, something's always missing. Welcome to Emotionally Wealthy, a podcast for high achievers who are ready to trade emotional disconnection for clarity, fulfillment, and relationships that are nourishing, not draining. I'm your host, Karen Conlon, licensed therapist, transformational coach, and your guide in turning insight into action. Are you ready for it? Let's do this. Welcome once again, everyone, to another episode of the Emotionally Wealthy podcast. Today's conversation, folks, really is something special, highly sensitive people, HSPs. Evelin Konyves is a writer, a ghostwriter, and a former dancer whose personal story explores what it means to grow up to be highly sensitive in environments that actually reward toughness and productivity and having emotional control. One of the things that for me personally makes Evelin's voice so compelling is her honesty and the cost of that emotional armoring that she had to bear for so long. She speaks very openly and candidly about how cultural and intergenerational beliefs around toughening up shape identity, her identity in particular, have shaped her ambition and her relationships. I'm so glad that you are here for it today. Evelin, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a delight being here. And thank you for that introduction.
Oh, yeah, you're so welcome. As I think about our trajectory and how we started and how we even got here, would you share with the listeners how you came to understanding the highly sensitive person identity or persona? How did you get to it? I mean, I know the story, but I would love for you to tell your version of it and your experience.
Sure. I didn't grow up knowing that I'm highly sensitive at all. I felt like I was different to other people, to my friends, but many of my friends were very similar to me too. So I had my gang that I could share my experiences and I knew they could understand it, but there wasn't this term highly sensitive person. So I think my actual turning point started a couple of years ago when my husband and I moved from London back to Romania and to the countryside.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember me thinking, it's so quiet here, and especially compared to London, all the stimuli in the countryside are so much more gentle. So I remember me telling my husband, I feel like I can finally hear my thoughts. And one of my thoughts was that I want to become a professional writer. I've been writing since I was little, but it's like now I really had the time and the mental space to do it. So I became a ghostwriter. And shortly after that, I met you. And you mentioned in one of our conversations that I might be a highly sensitive person. And that was a shock. Let me tell you that. So growing up in Romania, that's not a compliment, not at all. Right? So what I heard was that I couldn't adapt well, right? I'm too sensitive. I take everything personally. I'm vulnerable when I shouldn't be. I cry when I'm angry. So all these things just came tumbling down. But then what you said, I didn't take it as something bad. I take it like something I needed to park for the moment, but it stayed with me year after year. And then last year, I had the opportunity of collaborating on a book with a person who's a highly sensitive person and a coach for highly sensitive people. So
Interesting.
working with her, it was the dream. I think it was exactly what I needed when my mind was finally opened to it, right? But you've set the tone for that, right? You've put in the foundation. And working with her was a bit different because I had a bit more time than I usually have. So I got more time to read a couple of books, to do more in-depth research. And reading all these books, I started recognizing myself in them. Saying, wait a
Yes.
minute, this sounds exactly like me. This sounds like my experience. But how I'm reading about them, it's not like I'm faulty. How they were presented to me, it's like my mind is just different, and that's it. I'm not faulty. This isn't something I need to work on. It's just I'm different, and that's all.
Can you share, for example, as you think about things that you were reading, the books, the articles, perhaps while you were doing this research, and very interestingly enough, working with someone who not only identifies as HSP, but also embraces it to the point where she coaches other people as well. What was it that you were hearing? What did you start to hear? What was it that you were reading that led you to this point of saying, wait a minute, this feels really familiar. I mean, this feels like me. This sounds like me. Can you give us some specific, or maybe even the first couple of things that pop into your head when you think about those first, mind blowing things that you read?
Absolutely. I remember her telling me that she always felt more comfortable with animals, right? Surrounded
Mm-hmm.
by animals. And I remember when in the summertime, all the family would gather and we were maybe 15, 20 people, which for me, that was a bit too much. I love
It's
my
a lot.
family, but 15 people at the table, it's a bit much. So I remember
Yeah.
either being with a book and, well, shutting myself off from the rest of the family at some point, or with an animal in my lap. In absolutely every picture from my childhood, I've got a cat in my lap or I'm petting a dog. So I
That's really
immediately
interesting.
understood this thing of feeling safer around animals. And I think it was the way that I could regulate my nervous system when I could feel myself getting overwhelmed.
Yeah. This makes so much sense though. It's really fascinating how we, even as children, are able to find the capacity to self-soothe given the right environment, or even in the wrong environment given the right tools. And in this case, the quote unquote tool happened to be your cat, or a cat or a dog, right? It was this, being able to find that source of comfort in an environment that felt so overstimulating, and also that you really can't control, right? Because you can't control how many people around you. You can't control what they talk about. You can't control the volume, right? Or how many people are talking at one time. So there's all these things surrounding you that are out of your control. And yet there was something very natural, almost organic, that you were able to find comfort in. What was it about, if you could just take your mind back to that moment, what was it about petting the cat or the dog that you found soothing? And what did you experience in your nervous system? What did your nervous system, what are the signals that your nervous system gave you to let you know that, yes, this is good. This is what I need right now?
You know, I'm not sure. I'm sure it was something that my intuition told me
Mm,
that
yeah.
if I'm petting a cat or I'm petting a dog, I will calm down. I love animals too. So
Yeah.
I'm I'm really not sure. I'm curious about that.
Well, and I mean, yes, of course, there are many studies that show that having a pet like a cat or a dog, and just the act of being able to pet them in this way lowers your cortisol levels, cortisol being the stress hormone. So, on a purely biological level, this makes complete sense. But of course, you're not aware of that. So it's just really fascinating uh, to hear that you were able to connect with that intuition. And that is one of the biggest gifts that HSPs have, is this incredible intuition and sensitivity around intuition, right? Talk to me a little bit about intuition and what role that's played in your life as a former dancer, when you started writing, in different areas of your life.
So when I was a teenager, especially, and teenagers are rambunctious. So I
Yes.
used to fight sometimes with my parents, right? Like any teenager would. And as I told you before, I'm not good at conflict. Like when I'm angry, when I feel I cannot express myself, I just start crying an ugly kind of cry, right? So after the fight was over, I would just go to my room, lock myself in, and start writing everything that I felt. And
Mm-hmm.
sobbing and writing, somehow, I think my body was also helping me calm down with sobbing and probably with crying. And then
Yes.
putting my thoughts into words and giving them time also helped me do that. And even now, when I'm not sure what I'm feeling, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, if I can get a pen and paper, well, digitally doesn't work as well for me, right? I need
Mm-hmm.
the pen and paper. I'm sure to not necessarily solve a problem, but make sense of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So intuitively, it sounds like
Mm,
you go to the pen and paper to let it out, right? So in one case, intuitively, when there was an animal around, that you can pet to use as self-soothing, right? You went there. As you grew up and had the knowledge and started to write, intuitively, you knew that that is what you needed to help yourself, to express yourself rather.
right, right,
You know, I
definitely.
wanted to say something about what you were saying before about I didn't know how to express myself.
Yeah.
Um, Crying is a form of expression. Now,
Whoa.
right? So I want to ask you about that. Is it that in your community, in your culture, in your environment, did you grow up in an environment where that was not seen perhaps as an acceptable form of expression? Because think about it, right? If we're crying, even if you're angry and you're crying, you're expressing yourself.
That's true. Just not how I wish I was. Right.
Okay. Yeah. 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 But
Yeah.
is that, when you say that, like, it's not how I wish I was, is that because environmentally or culturally that just wasn't an acceptable response? What is
I
it about
think
the
so.
crying that made it feel like, oh, I wish I wasn't like that?
I think what I mean by that is I wish I wasn't that vulnerable, and that might be
Mm,
cultural. So not in my family. My parents were always open and in tune to my needs, but I think so I was born, sorry, this is gonna be a loop.
no,
I
this is
was
great.
born a couple of years after Romania returned to democracy. So right after
Mm-hmm.
communism. And I think it was an underlying understanding that if you are like everybody else, we're safer in uniformity, right? So if you act
Yes.
like everybody else, you are easily accepted. And well, just a couple of years before I was born, that's the only thing that kept you safe, right? I haven't really experienced that, just the remnants of it. And even politically,
Yeah.
education was still so much influenced by communism, but also what we wanted to do. So I'm still the generation that if we're not a lawyer or a medical doctor, well, mm,
Yeah.
right. So I think because of this uniformity that was instilled in us, I realized that I might have different needs than my peers. And but I'm I wasn't encouraged in school, for example, to ask for something. So if for me during literature class, right, English, if
Mm-hmm.
we were given essays to write, and I really enjoyed that, but my classmates weren't really into writing, so I could hear them talking and such, and I was just trying to concentrate on what I wanted to write. And then
Yes.
I think it was so much stimuli from inside myself, all these thoughts that I wanted to connect. And then I could hear my colleague from 3 seats over talking, and
Yes.
then somebody at the back, and it was just too much. So
Yeah.
I realized that I'm getting overstimulated sooner than my classmates were. And
Yeah.
maybe I needed a quieter environment, but I wasn't, I didn't know I could ask for it. So it isn't that I wasn't encouraged directly to ask for it. I didn't know that's an option.
You didn't know that that was an
Yeah.
option to
Yeah.
ask.
To ask. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like you're saying, the norm or what was considered appropriate or normal was to be uniform with everyone else, which meant that if this is what everybody else is doing, that you're expected to be in it or at least tolerate it. And if you don't have anyone letting you know that it is okay, of course, you're not going to make an assumption, right? Because it's very clear what's expected of you.
Yes.
Was there a
Yes.
lot? Was there a lot of that? You know, a lot of that like expectation. Tell me about the other expectations that you grew up with, either directly or indirectly, about identity or who you should be or how you should act, for example, just
Mhm.
based on your environment.
Yeah, I think I was always expected to be a good girl, listen to my parents, respect my elders, know
Mm-hmm.
that adults know better, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen to my teachers, do what was expected of me. I wasn't necessarily encouraged to put myself last, but I realize now that that was the result of
Yes.
these beliefs that I gathered and then digested as I became an adult. Something that I realized was weighing on me was I knew from when I was very little that I had artistic inclinations, right? But in Romania, those weren't seen as jobs. So even as a
Right.
child, I was I was allowed to dance, right? I was allowed to go to swimming classes, for example. Those I enjoyed too. But as I grew, my parents didn't put any pressure in my career choice, but and I'm sure when I started thinking of what university to go to, they wouldn't have anything against me getting an English degree, for example. But I knew the expectations were to get a job that pays, right?
Right.
Whereas being artistic, so like a dancer or an intellectual artist, like a writer, was not just frowned upon, it was discouraged. So the starving artist persona was prevalent.
Yes. Yeah. It's it's so interesting because it's almost like you, the person who you are, intuitively, when we talk about nature versus nurture, just by nature, is someone who is creative, sensitive, aware of the things around you, of nature, of the world around you, very aware, almost so that it's distracting sometimes. It is a person who expresses themselves through words, written words, and emotional expression. And it's almost as if all of who you are was something that, in order to quote unquote survive, you had to suppress. Did you feel that there were parts of you then that you had to suppress? I don't want to make that assumption.
Certain parts. So
Yeah.
because my parents have been really supportive, even
Mm-hmm.
though as a university choice, I went with Plan B. So I first studied as an environmental scientist, but then I was a rebel too, because on my first day
As you
going
should
to,
be, yes.
yeah, I'm a bit cheeky now. I'm a bit too full of myself. So on my first day going to uni, right after the welcome festivities, I went to the conservatory, so the music school, to look
Yes.
for ballet classes. So I was in a new city, a bigger city than my hometown, and I knew now's the time to restart ballet. I stopped going to ballet classes when I was 8. So at this point, I wasn't prepared for it, but it didn't matter. I just loved it so much. So throughout the first year of uni, I went to ballet classes on top of my, um, well, learning and my assignments. And here is where something really interesting happened. So on that first day, after I signed up for the ballet class, my classmates and I went to, well, explore the city. It was so much bigger and more beautiful than my hometown. And we
Hmm.
came across the National Theater, and I was in awe with the building. We didn't go in because it was closed, but I just stood there and I thought to myself, I will dance on that stage. I don't know how, but I will
Wow.
dance on that stage. So I forgot all about this, but I kept on going to ballet classes. And then maybe a year in, friend of our teachers asked to attend our ballet class. And you could tell that he was a ballet dancer. He was maybe in his 50s, which is long retired in the ballet world, but he had that poise. You could tell
The
he'd still be
grace, like that
comfortable.
grace that ballet dancers
Absolutely,
typically
absolutely.
carry. Hmm.
Yes. You could tell he could be on the biggest stages all around the world still. So after the ballet class, he told us that he just opened his dance academy and he invited us to audition. So normally I would be going down self-doubt lane really fast in this situation, right? So I would be nervous and start wondering if I'm good enough, but not this time. I don't know what happened to me, but I just went for it. I auditioned and I got it. I got the
Oh my
role.
gosh. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
I,
You
I'm
manifested
still,
that, right? I mean,
I,
I think to a certain degree, there was some manifestation
I,
happening.
I think so, yes. And then by Christmas, our show was ready for the public, and this is where I think I manifested it. Guess where did we have our first show? On the
Yes.
stage of the National Theater.
Amazing. Amazing. What was that moment like for you? I
Oh,
mean, my goodness.
wonderful, wonderful. I didn't take for granted any rehearsal. I think I was elated all the time, if that's possible. I felt like I was living a dream and I had both roles, both plan A and plan B now. Like plan B
Yeah.
was uni. I kept up with my studies, but then I could have dancing as well.
I mean, that's an incredible, incredible achievement. Especially given that you had gone for so long of a stretch of time without dancing and practice. And, it speaks to, I think, a talent that you have and that you were able to just really push yourself and resource whatever it was that you needed from within yourself to believe in yourself. And I think that that's a big part of it, right? I mean, a lot of times we have stories that we tell ourselves about who we are and who we're not, and what our limitations are and what they're supposed to be. But there was something that happened to you when you went to uni, where it's almost like, okay, I am taking care of the plan A and the thing that's expected of me, and I'm doing the things that will perhaps set me up for life, career wise, financially, or whatever. And now that I've taken care of that, the sense that I get is that then that opened up this freedom for you to explore and allow yourself to fully be in what it was that you really wanted to do. And look at what happened. I mean, that's amazing.
There's something that I think I haven't been told directly, but it was suggested in my childhood, is that I was always a dreamer. So I think people, to protect me, kind of put me off my dream, in the sense that they would
Mm.
tell me that, oh, but that's really hard. Like, that doesn't happen to ordinary people, right? So I never thought that ordinary people couldn't do extraordinary things, right? So the
Wow.
moment this dancing on the stage of the National Theater, that was extraordinary for me. Right? So
Absolutely.
it was the first time that I realized that it's not that I think I'm special and that's why I dared do it. It's because I worked for it and I kept maybe my intuition open for
Mm-hmm.
to notice when the opportunity arose, and then I went for it. And what I'm surprised about is that just like now,
Mm-hmm.
normally I would be really, really nervous, but I'm not as nervous as I thought I will be talking to you. And I
Yeah.
wasn't as nervous as I thought I will be auditioning for the dance academy.
Does that have something to do, you think, with the story that you tell yourself? We all have stories that we tell ourselves,
Um,
right? These stories, these narratives that we have that are shaped by our early experiences, our environments, cultural, social norms, gender expectations, all these things, external. Okay. These are the things that, sort of fill in the blanks about how we see the world and how we feel the world sees us. And then that's followed by the narrative that we create about ourselves. So, I find it really fascinating. I find you very fascinating, Evelyn, because, um, I've heard you say this before where you say, I'm not really good at speaking. I'm better at writing. And yet, um, you articulate and express yourself in such a way, that is so beautiful and so clear. And so to me, I find it really fascinating when I hear out loud the story that you tell yourself. And it's these realizations, that you have when these shifts, because it sounds like, was the university the shift? Was that the first time that you felt a shift inside of you? And then also followed by a shift in the story that you tell yourself. Tell me a little bit about what happened there after that experience. What that internally, what was that shift like?
I remember even my mom's friends told me that I'm really driven, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I agreed with that. It's just I didn't see the results I was necessarily expecting. And
Mm-hmm.
then now it was something that I was dreaming about and I worked for it and it happened. So it was the first time it actually happened. So
Yeah.
I think the way my narrative shifted at this point was that I can do things I never thought would be possible for me. And that opened a whole new world of possibilities, right?
Yeah.
But at some point I lost that again. I
Can you
think
tell me about that? Do you know when or what happened?
I'm not sure I know when or
Mm-hmm.
what happened, but I think I came back to a scarcity mindset, if I may, because I moved
Sure.
to London and I tried getting a job as a dancer and I didn't get any reply.
Mm.
Whereas in Romania, I had, it felt like this career had a lot of potential. So I think I fell a bit from well, it's this cloud, right? Where I thought I could do anything. And then
Yeah.
London happened, which was, well, you had to go travel anywhere you'd go, you'd have to travel for about an hour, right? So that
Yeah.
was tiring to begin with. And then
Yes.
hearing no
Yes.
after no, and rejection is never easy, but I took it so personally. Like I could hear them say, you're not good enough. You've come
Mm.
to the capital of dance, to the capital of theater, and sorry, you're not good enough. So I gave up on this dream and I started working a regular job. I started working in retail. But then I started realizing that the skills that I had dancing weren't necessarily translating to retail. I could feel more the vulnerability of being a highly sensitive person in the sense that I was really nervous when I was taking payment, right? So I would hold the client's card in my hand and my hands were shaking like this before putting the card
Wow.
in the machine, right? And the clients saw that and many of them were really well intentioned. And I remember them saying, "Oh, she's so fragile, she's so shy," or like shaking at 24. Like I was expecting to have it all figured out, right? Or
Right.
poor girl. And again, I was 24. I didn't feel like a girl, but I did expect myself to have it all figured out by then, which I
Right.
didn't. Oh my God,
Yeah.
I didn't.
No, I mean, rarely, I mean, most of us do not. Sometimes even, at 30, 35. I mean, and then you start over again at 40.
Yeah,
So, but that experience that you're describing sounds, as you were describing it, I was envisioning you, taking the payment and just trying to envision what it must have been like for you to be so surrounded by so many people. I think back at the experience that you had when you were a kid that you were describing before. The difference, though, is that when you were a kid, you were able to maybe find some solace in maybe petting the cat or the dog or a book, right? Whereas here, this is different. Now this is survival, right? There is no choice for you other than to have to deal with all the noise and have to deal with all the people and have to deal with, all of the sensations and the stimuli that you were experiencing. What did you do or how did you handle it when faced with this dilemma?
right. I don't think I dealt with it because not then and
Mm-hmm.
there, because I could feel I was so ashamed of putting the client in the situation where they had to witness me being
Mm,
so nervous about something that probably felt absolutely natural to them. I was thinking about doing a good job too and being really careful with their money. I was thinking of my manager looking over my shoulder, checking if I
right.
am doing a good job. I was also thinking of why am I acting differently than how I'm supposed to be, right? Because I didn't want to be different. I just wanted to fit in and do my job. That's all
Yes.
I wanted to do at that point.
Yeah. And
And I think only by practicing it, and I don't know if I didn't knew much about breathing techniques then, but I think at some point I did start breathing a bit deeper, a bit longer, and then my hands
yeah.
finally weren't shaking like this. But I'm not I think only by practicing it for longer and with different clients, if they were more intimidating or not. And at some point I just stopped being so affected by the adrenaline. I could still feel the adrenaline. I could still feel myself getting vigilant about what I was doing and being careful,
Mm-hmm.
but my body wasn't interpreting it as life or death, right? I
Oh,
didn't
that's
feel threatened
interesting.
by it anymore.
So your body was giving you some of those signals, but it didn't feel unsafe anymore. It felt uncomfortable. It sounds like.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Um, did you also, you mentioned that depending on who you were talking to or what the client, how the client presented or showed up as, like that also shifted however you responded. Did you, did you find, and maybe do you still find that you respond to people's energy? Can you pick up on people's energy?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Tell me about that. Tell me about your experience, even, as far back as you can remember, um, and, and, and what that's been like for you, how it's impacted you.
Right. I remember if my parents were having an argument or if one of them had a bad day at work, I
Hmm.
started having a bad day. And that still happens. So if my husband has a bad day, I know logically that it doesn't help me starting having all these negative thoughts and starting worrying about him. It doesn't help either of us
Hmm.
feel better, but it's like I can't help it. I just absorb it. But then the good part of this is when I was on stage, I could feel it when the audience started being mesmerized by the show, right? I
Yeah.
could feel it if I were on stage. I could feel it when I would this be flow where they wouldn't think of they're witnessing a show, they're here for the show, they were just enjoying the show, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then for kids, when I was in a show and the audience was full of kids, that was magnificent. Like the dial was turned up all the way, and they they were 100% living the show
Yes.
from
Yeah.
the first second. From the first second,
Yeah. It's magical, I think, with children, whether we are watching them perform or whether they are the ones on stage, or rather they are in the audience, because I think you're right. There is something very magical, that happens with children when they are in tune. And it happens, of course, with adults too, but with adults, sometimes we're in our heads so much that it takes us a while um, to bring the walls down, or to even understand or know that, oh, this isn't needed in this moment. This is safe. This is okay. I can allow myself to just be in this moment, to feel the performance rather than watch it, because I feel like there's a difference, right, between watching something and feeling it. I think, there's a difference. I mean, I know, I love to dance also. And there's a difference when I am dancing and following the steps, because I want to make sure I'm following the steps, and dancing, just letting my body move to whatever the music is taking, wherever the music is taking it to. So I can see what you're saying about that magical moment that you probably that you probably experienced, because your body is in attunement with the audience, it sounds like, Evelyn. And it's nonverbal, it's energetic. I mean, and if this isn't right, please correct me, but that's kind of the sense that I'm getting, that this is magic. It's energetic. It is, um, it's fluid, and you are in line with the audience. Like, you get that they are with you. So there's no intimidation about feeling watched, because you're not being watched in that moment. You're being understood, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Maybe it doesn't.
yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I don't really have an explanation for it because
Yeah.
logically, I would think I would look at their faces and realize if they're into what they're seeing or not. But they were too far and too many, right?
Right.
To make this kind of an assumption. So I guess it was just feeling when they were 100% enjoying, and we made the show together, right? There was a couple of us on stage, but every show felt different through the audience.
Yes, through the audience.
Yeah.
So that sounds like you had this amazing connection in that moment with your body, right? Mind and body working together, fully connected, which then also brought in the audience, and they connected with you as well. I want to ask you about what happens if you've ever experienced the opposite of that, when you have been in situations where it just feels like too much, right? Maybe somebody's telling you a story and it feels really like you're not just hearing their story. Maybe it's a sad story. You're feeling the sadness of that story. Can you recall any time that disconnection has actually been your go-to when you're feeling too much or when things
Mm.
feel like too much?
I don't yet feel like I have a choice not
Mm-hmm.
to feel what the other person is feeling. So I
Oh, that's interesting.
admire I really admire people who are good at cognitive empathy, right? They will solve your problem immediately. They will know what you're feeling and they will solve your problem immediately if that's what you need. But I'm not like that. So the way I realize what the other person is feeling is because I feel it, and then I start through introspection to realize what I'm feeling, what is my feeling, what is their feeling, and then understand it through what I am feeling.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a detour, and I always felt like I'm slower going that way, but I think I'm better in emotional empathy. Is that it?
Yeah.
Than
Yeah.
cognitive empathy. So for me, it's like cognitive empathy is the second step to understanding the other person. But I never felt like I could lock myself from it. And if I'm in a situation where I really don't agree with the person, I just want to crawl out of my skin, I usually get indigestion. So I usually get digestive problems.
Okay, so that is where, because that is where your body goes, which
Yeah.
is not an uncommon, thing actually that happens, right? Our mind and gut are very much connected, and we're not going to get into the science of it, but absolutely um, they are in conversation back and forth, giving feedback and signals to each other 24/7. And so that is not an uncommon experience that you have where you feel indigestion or you start having some gastro issues. So what do you do? Like what do you do when you have a situation where I really disagree with this person? There are times that maybe you can just, okay, this is not worth it. But what if it is something where, oh, this is really uncomfortable. I really don't want to do this, but I feel like I have to. I have to speak up or I have to say something. Um, what do you do to cope with those feelings? And then how do you get past it or move
Mm.
through it rather? Because a lot of times it's not just getting past it. We have to actually move through things.
Yeah, plow through them sometimes,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think my go-to is intellectualizing it. Like I'm starting to think what's their perspective? What got them to this point? So if
Mm,
I think long enough, I think I can understand anyone, even if I don't agree with them. But then I still get the digestive issues. So I'm
yeah.
sure I care about it, about understanding and agreeing with them. And if I don't feel good about myself,
Mm-hmm.
not about them, because they are free to think as they wish. But I don't feel like it's not in my power to disagree with them, because if I must, I will disagree with them gently, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm aware that their perspective might be just as correct as mine is.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's in my right to tell them that they're wrong. Does that make sense? That sounded weird.
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds like you have an openness. That's how I am translating this, right? That's how I'm taking this in, which is you have an openness um, of being able to say to yourself, well, where might they be coming from? Where might this be coming from? And at the same time, understanding that you may need to address this and that it will be uncomfortable, but that they have a right to their opinion. When you're faced with needing to speak up or, say something that is not, to say something about something that is not in alignment with you,
Mhm.
your body lets you know through these GI issues and stuff like that. What other signals do you get in? Maybe there aren't any other, but like, do you have like heart palpitations? Some people experience like signals that your body tells you when gosh, I don't like this.
Mm-hmm. Sweaty palms and headaches are definitely top of the
Mm,
list too. But then I start to get tension in my shoulders as well.
yes.
I'm not sure I tense up, but my shoulders feel like I do tense up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And also as a former dancer,
Mm.
which by the way, I say former, but I don't think that ever leaves you. I see you as a dancer, period. Um, you do have to be very in touch with your body. And so I can imagine that you probably feel the things, the signals that your body gives you more than the average person.
Yes, I think I do. But also, I realize that when I'm feeling stressed, if I start relaxing my body first, so if I tell my mind
Yes.
that calm down, there's no reason to be stressed, it doesn't work for me. So if I manage to breathe a bit slower and maybe
Hmm.
do a progressive muscle relaxation, my mind will follow. So to me, it's not top down, it's bottom up
Yes,
for
yes,
sure.
and for those of you listening who are not familiar with the term top down and bottom up, top down it refers to thoughts. Like a lot of times, let's say for example, if you're anxious, some people right away it's their thoughts. They know that they're anxious because they have all kinds of thoughts in their minds. They have, the what ifs scenarios and things like that. Whereas with other folks, when we're talking about bottom up, they feel it in their bodies first. And so I really appreciate you, Evelin, bringing that up because that is a very real thing that most people are not really aware of unless you have done some deep diving or maybe in therapy, or maybe are, yoga or some type of somatic work. Most people don't understand that. And a lot of times they end up using the wrong coping strategies, they for different sensations. For example, if they're having bottom up types of anxieties, they try to talk themselves out of it when in reality, if you're having these types of reactions or bottom up where you're feeling it in your body first, you have to talk to your body in a language that it understands. And in that moment, it's not going to be a cognitive, intellectual conversation. You have to address your body either through breath work or what you called, what you talked about before, PMR, which is progressive muscle relaxation, which is a type of muscle contracting and contrasting technique. And so I really appreciate you bringing that up because so many people are not really aware of that difference. And it's really important to know, because you do handle those types of things differently. I wanted to ask you, since we're talking about self-awareness, right? Um, Emotions. I noticed that when you answer, you say, I think a lot, I think, right? Which is your go-to. I want to talk to you though about emotions and ask you, given your experience, given your life, given your environment, given even where Romania was historically at that time around your birth and growing up, were there emotions that were harder? Were some emotions harder for you to acknowledge as you became more self-aware? As you became more self-aware, right? Because before, when we're not aware, we don't know. But as you became more self-aware, one of the things that you mentioned before was shame. So that's an emotion that you've brought up on a couple of occasions. I'd like to know a little bit more about what are once you started to become self-aware about who you are, how you think, what were some of those emotions that were hardest for you to acknowledge as you grew into your self-awareness?
Right. Shame is definitely top of the list. And I think now I heard myself, this might be cultural too, because an aspect of that uniformity that we inherited from communism was that neither of us was special. We were
Mm-hmm.
all equal and treated as such. So I think asking, well, for the longest time, I realized something is different, right? I've got different needs, maybe, but
Yes.
asking people to treat me differently felt like asking for special treatment, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Which on one hand made me stand out, which I didn't want to do. And then on the other hand would mean that I'm not adapted to the world that I live in. And that would make me feel even more ashamed of myself. And
Right.
embarrassment is pretty close to that too. So even if I don't expect somebody to talk about me, right? Like put the spotlight on me,
Yeah.
I'll go tomato red. Even if it's correct, or I'm not necessarily ashamed of what they're saying about me, but just because the spotlight has instantly turned on me, I feel ashamed for not having the occasion to prepare for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So shame and then embarrassment. I wonder if anger was also one of those emotions that were difficult for you to acknowledge also, as you became more self-aware of what it was actually what it was that you were actually feeling. Anger a lot of times is the sort of easy go-to emotion because it very easily bubbles up. But a lot of times anger is a cover up for sadness, disappointment, irritability, anxiety, fear. And so I'm wondering if any of those things also are things that also you started to realize, gosh, yeah, these are emotions that I have a difficult time expressing because of all the things that you mentioned.
I would agree with you. Anger too. I just cannot pinpoint why. I mean, I was bullied for about 8 years when I was in
Mm,
elementary school and then a bit after that. And I remember these were my friends, my classmates, right? And
mm,
we would go home together too. And I remember getting home, being bullied on the way home, and then getting home and calling them up to apologize because I was sure that I did something wrong. And
mm,
then that's why I'm being bullied. But maybe part of me realized that I didn't necessarily do something wrong, but I didn't s- stay up for myself either. I didn't
right.
stand up for myself either. So maybe it was anger, but directed at myself for not
Mm,
standing up for myself and not agreeing to be treated any way other people decided to treat me.
yeah. It's a coping strategy that you very naturally used, I think, to be able to survive and get through your environment, right? Because they were still the only friends that you had, probably, or, at least the closest group that you had. And so you learned to get through it and to survive by apologizing for taking up space, which you earned by your sheer birth, right? But you didn't know that, of course. When you think back at those experiences, what do you think, or what do you actually, I don't want to ask you what you think. I want to ask you how you feel. Yeah. When you think back
I
at that
feel
particular
like
experience,
I
that's a really long time, Evelyn, to be bullied for, I mean, but at any time, 1 minute of being bullied is longer than anyone should be bullied. So like 8 years during those formative years, that's very that's heartbreaking and very, very difficult. And yet you found ways of managing.
Managing would be very kind of you to say, but I think I just closed it off,
Mm.
and all that box is for later. And I know I haven't dealt with it yet because my dad was telling me about this book that he really enjoyed, and it was about bullying. And I told him, I'm not ready to read about that. I'm not ready to talk about that. So I know that's something that sooner or later I'll have to deal with. It's just
Yeah.
I don't know where to start at this point. One of the bullies actually connected with me a couple of years ago, so many years after it happened.
Wow.
She apologized and told me that she realizes now what she did. And for more than half a year, I couldn't respond to her text. I didn't know what to say. And I remember even now the response that I gave, I don't think it was not good enough, but in the sense, I think I tried minimizing it. And I think I told her that, well, possibly part of that experience made me as artistic as I am today,
Mm.
which I hear how unfair that is. I hear myself locking the door even harder. That's how I coped with it, which isn't coping really, it's just disconnecting from it.
Right. So when you look back at that response, you see it as a form of disconnecting and dismissing of your own feelings. And in a way, it's interesting because in a way, when I think about how you would call when you were little, you would call to apologize. This isn't exactly the same thing, but in a way, you're kind of turning it around saying, oh, it's okay because what you did actually made me better in this way. So did you feel a responsibility to a certain degree to make it better for her, or was that for yourself?
I think for both, because
Mm,
I don't want to hurt her, because I haven't digested what happened. I cannot tell her how she made me feel either,
right,
in case
right.
that helps her. But it might be something regarding my people pleasing tendencies, because even with friends now, if we're out and I feel I'm getting tired, oh, I've got a group of friends who we play Dungeons and Dragons with, who might be
Hmm.
watching this podcast at some point. So this is my confession. So let's say we're battling a creature or another. And I'm really tired. I just want to go to sleep, but we just started the battle. And I could tell that all of them just want to see the battle through. And it's usually the most exciting part of the game. And even though my eyes are falling, I will not put a stop to the game. So
Yeah.
I I realize it's not as extreme as not telling her that, well, what you did had a really strong impact on me, but I'm still, is this social context what I'm thinking about? I will always put my needs last when there's more people who could earn from me um, making an effort. And I
Hmm.
realize that sometimes this works against me, because I've got days where I'm really tired. I realize I need more time to recharge my batteries. But
Yes.
if I take that time, I feel like I'm lazy. Or if I take that time and I disappoint my friends wouldn't get disappointed if I tell them, sorry, I'm not up for a game or for meeting up, but I still feel like I disappoint them if I tell them, sorry, I just need rest.
And so for you, when you think about disappointing someone or, let's say, for example, this person who was, by the way, taking accountability and recognizing and acknowledging, and then on some level you said, well, I'm not going to make it worse. So what's the worst that could happen if you disappoint someone in your mind? What happens?
We stop being friends, I guess. But then
So,
I will think about it years after that. So this is something else I wanted to ask you about, because for the longest time I thought my predilection is to overthink everything. But then writing, it sometimes works in my favor, in the sense that I need to think of different perspectives to find the best way to write something so that it resonates with more people. And I know part of that is deep processing, right? So where do I draw the line between the two? where is where am I still processing disappointing a friend, and where does it become overthinking, where there's nothing good that I can learn from that experience anymore?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very thoughtful and I think important question also. I don't think that's limited to people who are highly sensitive. I think that in general, it is something that many people struggle with. And what I would say to you is that, um, well, first of all, there are some ways of thinking about things and some tools that you can provide yourself to help you stop overthinking by being very clear about the questions that you're asking yourself. So, for example, um, with that situation, right? I don't want to disappoint my friends, right? I would say to you, well, what's the worst that could happen? Just like I said, and you said, well, we stop being friends. So this is then the line of questioning that I would give to you for you to then give to yourself, right? Moving forward. That's a big jump from disappointing, right? to we're not going to be friends anymore. So are you saying that if you disappoint them by not playing this game, by honoring your tiredness and choosing to not play anymore, is you putting your need to rest going to negate all of the years of friendship, all of the good times that you have had, all of the foundations of trust that you've already built, all the confidences that you shared, all of the good times that you shared? Will these friends take your wanting to rest and choosing yourself as a sign that the relationship should be over, that it's not worth it anymore?
No, I'm sure they wouldn't. I'm sure if I were to articulate it just like I did now, like we did now, they would encourage me to rest.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so those are the questions that when we are catastrophizing, because that's what that is called, right? That when we're catastrophizing, we want to be able to bring ourselves back into a grounded space through more realistic type questions, because though that response that you had, it comes from a very, very emotional place. And what we want to try to do is, whether you are like very, very strongly placed on the emotional side or very, very strongly placed on the intellectual or rationalizing side, what you want to do is you want to bring yourself back to the middle a little bit, right? You don't want to deny your emotions, but you want to bring yourself back to center, or as close to center as possible, through rationalizations, right? And the same thing I would say to the other end. If you are intellectualizing everything or rationalizing things, well, you're denying your emotions about it. You have some kind of feeling about it. So we want to move you into a place where you feel safer expressing those emotions, so that you're not leaning on just intellectualizing, because you're missing out on something that's happening that is very real, which is you have an emotion about it, right? Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so what I would say to you is, when you are having moments of like, if I disappoint someone, if I anger someone, they will abandon me. They won't want to be my friend. This makes me a bad person. What I would encourage you to do is ask yourself these questions that bring you a little bit more to the center of it, which is, well, is that actually true? You have to learn to challenge those things that are going on in your head, and very much learn to poke holes in your own story. This is what you're doing. You have to learn to poke holes in your own story. These are patterns. These are conditioning responses that you're having. And you, just the same way you learned these patterns, you can also learn new ones. I'm not going to say that you unlearn the old ones, because those stay there. Our brains work in such a way that the networks, their memories, that maybe, you learn a new pattern and maybe the old one becomes a little bit more quiet. But, you don't necessarily unlearn them, but you learn new ones that you can replace these existing ones with. Now you're experiencing the choice. Why? Because you're bringing awareness into your story. You're not just repeating the same story. You're bringing awareness, which brings you choice, the awareness that you also have choice now. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I think what I forget a lot is that feelings are also information. And what this
Yes.
comes from, I think I'm ashamed for feeling things strongly. I mean, I was called too emotional so many times that I'm sure I internalized this shame. So
Right.
maybe that's
Right.
why I disregard feelings, even though I know my strengths are in feeling, because that's what it's easier for me to translate. Right. But
Yes.
yeah, I don't want to be too emotional. I just want to be emotional enough to understand.
Yeah, and again, I understand that, when you say I don't want to be too emotional, because when you're saying I don't want to be too emotional, for you, there are maybe consequences or, things that happen that you say, I really wish this was not the outcome. If I could handle this in a less emotional way, right, the outcome might be different. And what I would say to you is that that is the right answer for some circumstances, and it will be not the right answer for other circumstances. The thing is, you're never going to know. And I think it's important for you to give yourself that compassion, that empathy that you have so much of for other people. You give it to yourself first and allow yourself to understand and accept that you're going to make mistakes, and that you always have the option of going back and having a conversation or rethinking it or revisiting. And that it's not, it's very rarely, I mean, unless you're dealing with someone who's very closed-minded, I mean, there's very rarely an opportunity where you say, well, this is it. This is my one shot. And if that's the case, you probably don't have a very healthy relationship with that person. So you agree that's something that resonates.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. I think while you're doing this work and continue to do this work, it's lifelong work, by the way. Even though we are evolving, sometimes our environment does not evolve with us. So I would say that there is always work to do, and it's constant. But what that does is that it also builds self-trust. I want to pivot, like I'm looking at the time and I want to be, conscientious of that. And I want to ask you a couple of final questions.
Sure.
When you are asked to do something now, right, given the awareness that you have, the slowing down of, your thought process that you have now before you answer something, when you are being asked to do something, what are the internal questions that you ask yourself now before saying yes to something that's demanding, particularly demanding? What are those things you ask yourself?
Mm. I think before I would ask myself, so before I realized I'm an HSP, I would ask myself, what would it cost me if I said no? Right?
Yeah.
Would that relationship with the person be worse for me saying no? But now I think I learned a bit more to put myself first, in the sense that if I've got a really tight deadline, and let's say somebody asks me to drive them to the city. I live in the countryside, so the
Mm-hmm.
city is maybe 40 minutes away
Mm-hmm.
from here. If they ask me to drive them, and it's not an emergency. So if it's a medical emergency, that's
Yeah.
okay. I can work at night, right?
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
drive them. But if it's not an emergency, now I would say no and
Yes.
give them the option of another day that's more convenient for me. And then,
Mm.
of course, I'll be open to their suggestion too. But before this, I didn't feel like I've got an option to say no.
Yeah.
But now I'm more aware of my body too and of how tired I can become if I do things I don't really want to do or I don't think it's the right time for me to do them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that type of awareness is what you need. I always say micro steps. Like if you've heard, any of my episodes before, it's a term that I like to use because I really believe in it. Change happens through small, manageable, really doable micro steps. And so what you've just described, as far as I'm concerned, is the ultimate result of all this work you've done, right? Being able to evaluate, okay, is this urgent? Is this not? Do I put myself first? Do I not? And then be able to handle it by giving the other person some options that work for you, right? So you have already done it. You are already doing it. And now it's just a matter of being able to apply that to these other areas in your life where you still struggle a little bit, like not wanting to disappoint, right? Like what we were talking about before, or not make someone sad, because of what you feel about, a discussion you're having. That's what I think I wanted to point out to you, is that you're already doing it, and you don't have to expect that, oh, because I do it here, now I have to do it everywhere. Give yourself time and, master one area at a time. That's okay. It is completely okay. Well, I have been, my goodness, um, I'm struggling to have the words because I've been totally in this, and in our discussion, I have so many more questions that I could ask you, and so many more perspectives that I'd love to learn from you. But of course, we have to at some point end our time together. Is there anything, Evelin, that you want to share for anyone who's out there who is an HSP, who's also a high achiever? Because obviously we know this about you, the things that you've done, you are a high achiever who is also a highly sensitive person. Those two things often are difficult to have together. If you had any message to leave people who maybe are really resonating with your story, or maybe this is opening their eyes for the first time, anything you want to leave them with, any thoughts that you might want to share?
Absolutely. Something that I think many of us HSPs have in common is self-doubt. So there
Mm-hmm.
were so many things that I didn't even try because I didn't feel like I'm prepared enough or comfortable to, but
Mm-hmm.
confident enough.
Yeah.
And now I know that you don't need confidence to start to try something. You just have to do it. And then with repetition, confidence will come.
Evelyn, thank you so much for being here today. I so
Thank you so
appreciate
much for
you
having me.
so much. This is going to be so helpful for so many people. And if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to, I don't know, write a review on it or share it with someone who you think might benefit from listening to this today. If you're enjoying the show, again, let other people know, because this is the way that we will increase our listenership and help others also gain their own emotional wealth. And as always, I just want to say thank you for showing up for yourself by being here today. You're doing this for you, and I so appreciate you. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and stay emotionally wealthy. Thank you so much. Thank you, Evelin.
Thank you.
Oh, hey, quick reminder for you that this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional advice, diagnoses, or treatment. Always consult a qualified professional with any questions you might have.